Hello, this is Beau from BEAU'D Not Broken. This screen, we're on Facebook Live today. We're not on Periscope. I apologize, but also I know there'll be a few more viewers that can watch live on Facebook. This is the Daily Bend, and we talk to regular people, and we talk about regular problems and adversities and how people with faith and courage and endurance get through their days, their weeks, their years. I want to thank Sharon again from up in Brigham City. What an amazing example of what we talk about every day and how she's lived her life. And like I said in the promo, I put all my pity parties away. I think I need to gather them all back and put them somewhere else, because she truly is someone that is amazing with the ability to just have a happy day and move on. I mean, all of us, I can walk and talk and I can do all things physical, and who am I to complain? Anyway, thanks to her. And we've got Bill here today, and Bill's been a friend for a long time, but he has some amazing experiences. He currently is involved with the Draper Chamber, Draper City Council, but he's also a regular guy out in the real world that has experienced a lot of things. And I hope you'll continue to join me through probably about this half hour. We have about a half hour on the show. And again, you can go to the website BEAU'D Not Broken and get the shows. You can also on Facebook. This one will be on Facebook. It'll just download onto Facebook as well. And if anybody has any questions, comments, or wants to be on the show, please let me know. We're filling up well, and I think everybody's liking what we're doing here. So without further ado, I'm going to kind of pull this thing back a little bit. We're going to talk to Bill. I guess we'll cut me out every once in a while. We'll just have Bill there, which is fine. Bill, the general question is, tell us a little bit about yourself and a little bit about some of the struggles that you've been through, or one or two, or something that may have defined you in a way that, to help. Well, this is people helping people, and so I'll just leave it wide open for you.
Well, what's interesting is, you and I have talked before, life is full of breaks. You get this big break and magical things happen, but there's also challenges that come along with that. You never know when either one of those are going to happen to you. And I've had both of them in my life, and the thing I like about the BEAU'D Not Broken is at some point you do have to bend over, figuratively, and try to fit within whatever you're given, and I think that's the biggest challenge. I mean, the latest one I had, the biggest challenge I should say, is having to leave the cable business after 20 years. No fault of my own. The company actually treated me good. I mean, you got a nice severance package, but you're in a job, you're making, 6 figures a year. You've worked hard to get to that job. You had some breaks to get to that position. Through buyouts and acquisitions, all of a sudden your job doesn't exist anymore. And usually it's a moment's notice. They tap you on the shoulder and they said, we need to talk to you, your job is eliminated.
Right.
And so you don't see it coming. And it's really hard, and I spent really 10 years being fairly angry about that, and I kept living in the past, For one thing that happens is all those benefits you got during that time, you took for granted. It was an entertainment business,
like insurance,
even all the soft stuff, that the company had a bunch of jazz tickets that we gave out to employees, so we got those benefits. We were a Sundance sponsor, so we get to mingle with the stars. MTV would take you out to a concert, do high fives with Mick Jagger. Drove in the Great Race from Boise to Ogden for there's a History Channel. So
right.
It was like it was really a dream job. But when you're in the middle of the job, you're just working. You're doing what you can to make the company good, make your employees excel. But it all ends. All of a sudden the door comes down, you're all cut off. And one of the hard things about it is all your friends are going, and you've been through this, I know, and that's why I can relate, but your friends are going, hey, here's a job, apply for it. Hey, I'm qualified, I'm overqualified, or whatever for that job you put in for it. Well, after dozens and dozens of job applications, I finally realized that, it's probably some untold rule or unspecified rule that once you are severanced out, you're not getting back in unless you go to another market or something. And nobody will actually admit to there's a rule like this out there, but
Right.
that does remain. And some of it has to do with age, some of it has to do with economics. I mean, there's a bunch of probably valid rules for these type of behaviors, but it doesn't really help our economy. And that's the thing that's so concerned. And of course, I had to bounce around and do different jobs as managers and stuff. And finally, I landed a great job, which was for the Olympic Committee, the Salt Lake Organizing Committee. I was a telecom manager down in Provo at the ice arena. And it was a challenge, but it was also exciting. And the group of people there that did the hiring there, it was such a wonderful experience. They did a team approach. So I interviewed with 10 people. And the main guy was from Australia, and they were going through this. Well, instead of just going, well, we'll let you know, they get on the phone with the venue manager or the telecom manager for the venue. You're going to be excited about this guy. We got a good guy for you. They're talking about me. They haven't even told me I got the job yet.
Wow.
And I'm going, wow, I didn't expect this. And they said, well, okay, we're going to hire you. You need to report to work tomorrow. It was just bang, bang, bang. And I've never had such high demands put on me for any job. I mean, literally, I got one day to study. The next day, I'm running contractors. With the CADs and everything else.
Right.
I'm doing the whole thing. We're building that venue. And it was a great experience because the demands were extreme. I mean, they were extreme, but the techniques of how they managed was also extreme in a good way.
Mm-hmm.
Very appreciative. Did a lot of things to appreciate the employees because they needed a high level of enthusiasm. But you take that in today's world, businesses could take a look at that. And follow that example.
We're here. We're on BEAU'D Not Broken, the Daily Bend. We're talking to Bill here, who has a lot of experience within the business world and outside the government world as well. And we were talking about how he at one point had lost, kind of like not a dream job, but a job that was you thought was going along just fine. And I know there's a lot of people out there that have lost their jobs, that have tried to get jobs, and a lot of times they're looking at the gray hairs, they're looking at the, if you're over 30, 37 or 40 or whatever it might be, it's difficult. So today's show really is kind of, BEAU'D Not Broken, and having faith in yourself and in, really having this courage to continue on, because eventually something may happen if you've got that endurance to kind of keep, maybe retool. Maybe it has to be retooling. Maybe it has to be something else. Anyway, Bill was talking about after he left his telecom, or the cable job, and then he finds a job that looks to be something pretty amazing and a different type of management philosophy there. So I always kind of have to station identification. So yeah, continue on with your.
And you explained it well. And one of the things I learned during that time is, and it took me a long time to learn this, is you gotta let go. And I see this.
So letting go of the old job that you may have some triggers or some
Exactly.
issues with that you think may not get you another job, or potentially you could get another job.
Yeah, I met with a good friend a few weeks ago that's been in similar situations, been out of work for almost a year. Chose to leave a good job because they were really pushing him out. Anyway, when we sat down and talked, I took him to lunch and we had a long talk, asking him what he wanted to do. I was hoping that maybe I could help a little bit, and I still am trying to, but the thing I noticed most is he like me, was having a hard time letting go.
Right.
I mean, it literally took me about 10 years to get over it. Being downsized, not fired.
Right.
Just downsized out of a business that I worked myself up from an installer to really an executive level manager.
Right, a manager. What would be good? I mean, in that situation, how could someone in that situation that has been laid off, that has been looking for, what would be some good things for them to do, other than to retool, I guess I'm more talking about the mindset. What type of a mindset do you think they need to have out there in the job market?
I'll give you a piece of advice. I had one person in our neighborhood, when I was down and out, I looked for a long time, got a lot of rejection. So I was pretty down. He says, let me take you to lunch. Oh, okay. And this is one thing that he said to me. He said, what are you so afraid of? And I thought for a minute, what are you talking about? I don't even understand what that is. What are you afraid of? And he goes, you have a lot of fear. He recognized as he was chatting with me. And I go, I don't have fear. And he goes, have you ever failed? I mean, true failure, not just a setback, not something. And I look back at that, and I had a good path going forward. No, I haven't. He goes, then why are you so afraid of failure?
So is he trying to tell you, as you're applying for some of these jobs or even getting an interview, that you may come across to a potential employer as fearful or not confident enough, or was it kind of both ways?
You wear it on your shoulder, and I've seen it with friends that I've done similar things because I learned it from this gentleman. Go to lunch with people, talk to people, because sometimes you can trigger something within them because it really has to happen with that individual. Now, it doesn't mean there's magic that you're going to, it's not a TV show where the next day, you get called by, a Fortune 500 company and they give you the $200,000 a year job and everything's happy. And it's not like that, but it does help you kind of recenter the fact that, don't get hung up on that and have that. And typically the way it comes across is they can tell that you haven't let go of that old job. You'll talk about all these things you did in your old job. And they may not be negative,
right?
But they can tell that you've never really moved on, as opposed to, where I'm going next, how I'm going to treat the rest of my life, how that affects you as a prospective employer,
right?
And as I look back and saw that, that's exactly what I was doing, and ultimately, I ended up, getting a job with the Chamber of Commerce, and that was on a whim, by the way. So you never know. I thought about, I don't know if I wanted. My wife said, you got to go apply for this job. The CEO's leaving. She's, getting transferred with her husband to Denver. Okay, well, whatever.
So it was when you least expected kind of thing.
I'll go apply for the job, win an interview, and there was a lot of people interviewing for the job. It was kind of interesting, and it had to be interviewed by the board of directors, and it wasn't a great paying job either, and it still really isn't a high.
So you've been the CEO. They call you the CEO of the Draper for how long now?
14 years.
14 years. So you've seen.
Yeah. My initial thought was I'll kind of work through this 2 years, and then we'll see where I want to go from there, because I ultimately I wanted to get back into the corporate thing. I mean, I love that game, even though it's harsh.
Mm-hmm.
I love that it's. To be in a fast pace like that and to have all these things going on is exciting. It's being, responsible for 200 plus employees is exciting. If you like people, that's what you like. It's
the people business.
You can help people. You see people, grow. And those are the ones that leave typically.
So have you, it's kind of a loaded question, it is. So have you seen discrimination with older workers and
absolutely. It's a problem, and the problem is a detriment to business. Especially going this. In fact, I was talking to a good friend this morning about this, but the detriment is the fact that the employers are actually turning away good employees. And because when I was talking this morning, they made the prospective employee take a battery of tests.
Right.
And this is for a utility type company, for Excel and all that stuff. And anybody that's used Excel knows that it's hard to memorize.
And if you don't use it.
Yeah, if you don't use it every day, and you're not a guy that's all you do is do your job is being an analyst. Anyway, because the way that test was, so if you hovered your mouse over that, anything you clicked on counted as a wrong answer.
Oh, wow.
And so he was eliminated out of that job just because of that testing.
Right.
Now, if you know anything about human nature, testing only tells you a couple of things. Are you a good test taker or not a good test taker?
Yes, exactly.
That's really what it tells you, because the person may not, do well under pressure with the test. especially if you're sitting there looking at your watch, putting somebody under pressure. You don't know what the answers are because the answers can be anything, because that's the way a test is.
Right.
And so it's very difficult to measure whether or not the person's the right fit. And that's really what the point I'm trying to make is I encourage employers, when you're trying to find somebody, look for somebody that's a good fit, the right personality that fits your business, that fits your culture, somebody you can teach them the rest. And one of the most disturbing trends in job postings is they actually put have you ever done this in the job? And if you haven't done that, you're out. Well, the task that they're specifying is so narrow that it only happens within their industry or business.
Right, and they're missing
if you
somebody.
didn't work there before, did you do that?
Right.
No. And so think about that for a second. Would any of those people be working there that are interviewing you?
Right.
If they would have had the similar hiring practice.
Right.
And we talk about the economy we have in Utah, where literally we're about 3% unemployment.
What do you think the underemployment rate is, in your opinion?
Oh, it's probably 85% in Utah.
That's underemployment we're talking about, and that I think is part of BEAU'D Not Broken, in the sense that there's a lot of you out there, I know, myself included, that are, and Bill included as well. A lot of times you're looked at. You could have all kinds of experience and education, and I think the underemployment rate in Utah is, like you said, it's almost over the top. What's the age now? I mean, because I use the 40 or 45. Is it in the 30s now that we're seeing some people that are being rifted or laid off, or for younger or other types of workers? I want to finish the thought of underemployment.
Utah is different, and mainly because our birth rate is so high. If you look at Utah birth rates, they're in, I can't remember the exact numbers, they're like 2.7 or something like that, so it's approaching 3. The average is under 1 for the United States. We're at actually a 0 growth rate in the United States overall if you study the whole numbers. There's pockets, in the West is typically higher.
Right.
Larger families, more children and stuff like that. So you look at that, and then the fact is that Utah, in particular, they have a really young population. We have all these colleges close. We have 3 right here in the Wasatch Front, with BYU, UVU, and University of Utah. And of course, then you got stuff up in Ogden and everything.
Right.
So you look at the amount of young people getting higher educations that are qualified, that are ready to go get jobs. Well, that puts a lot of pressure on the businesses to hire them. And typically they'll come in at a lower wage because they're just out of college.
Right.
And so what it does is it creates this unique struggle for those older workers.
Well, and it's unfortunate too for those older workers, because a lot of times the older worker will say in an interview, I've done it myself, I'll take your entry level. I just want to feel, I'll take your entry level. I know I come with good baggage and bag baggage and good experience and good education, but maybe talk to that for a moment. I mean, that's part of the problem as well, is expressing getting to an interview and expressing yourself to the point where, as an older worker, you might take that job that only pays $35,000
and now
or
you're
whatever.
stuck in a thing, Bo, where now you have to break the interviewing rules. Because what aren't you supposed to talk about in an interview? Money.
Right.
Well, at what point do you break that big bubble and say, hey, I know you're worried you think I want a lot of money, even though that's the unspoken part about it.
Right.
But look, I really want to work here. I'm willing to come in at entry level, but in the back of their mind, and I've been told this before in interviews, they'll say, yes, but if something better comes along, you'll quit.
Well, and then,
who wouldn't?
Right, exactly. Even that.
Is it just you, or is it everybody that hire? If something comes along that's better, who wouldn't quit and leave? Because you're not on contract. They better put people on contract if they don't want that to be the case, or they have to be willing to say, look, Bo, we really like you. We want you to stay. We're going to pay you more if you stay. When you come and tell them I'm leaving, as opposed to the other one going, well, we're really angry that they're leaving.
Right.
Market forces, they'll tell you the market forces tell them to pay you so much.
Right.
We have to compete, we have to do all these things, those are valid concerns for any business. But the fact is, market forces also compete for the workers too. And so if they want to keep the good workers, sometimes they have to work to keep them. And sometimes they have to be really intuitive to hire the right people.
Right.
You don't look at the color of the hair. You don't look at all these things. You look at that person, and you start drilling down that person. Is that person going to bring our business to where we want to go? Is that person enthusiastic? Almost anybody can be taught. I mean, you've done a myriad of things. From selling scooters to whatever else.
Yeah.
Being a college professor to it's just an amazing thing. And I have similar type of things. I really look at I can do anything.
You're adaptable. An older
Yeah.
worker, one of the positives is and many of them are adaptable to different and willing to learn and new things.
I'll give an example. So I'm the CEO of the Chamber of Commerce, and of course I posted some stuff. Well, one of the things that I have to do here is maintenance. Well, how many CEOs have to? I put in a wrought iron railing on the front of the chamber office a couple of weeks ago. I welded it. I'm a welder too. Okay, so you look at all these things. And it's almost like, well, what do you want to be when you grow up? Well, does it really matter?
Right.
What I want to be is successful.
Yeah, I want to be a part of a team.
I want to be needed.
I want to make some. I want to make a living, but I want to be a part of something.
I want to be valued. I mean, these are the things that all of us want, and it's important. I went to a conference this last winter, and it was for our youth council, and they had a guy there that was talking about longevity. And the elements that made people live the longest. He talked about places all over the world. But one of the things that was very noted is in other parts of the world, and I'll cite the Japan experience, they have people that are 102 years old to still work there. And everybody in the community actually goes to them. They're like the guru on the mount. They're the ones, they're the aged ones, they're the people with the experience, there's the
wise people.
Yeah. And they're accommodated and they've done all this stuff. And those people have a very happy experience through the whole life. People worry about Social Security and all that kind of stuff. Well, most people will choose to work if they can, especially if they're valued.
Sure.
They're paid fairly.
Sure.
They're treated with respect. And, and that's one of the ways forward, I think, for our society, is we really have to look at that overall thing, what we're doing, as opposed to, it's all about the cheaper we can do it, the better we are.
Right.
Or, if we can turn the workforce over, it's more dynamic, people will feel like they have a better opportunity.
What about that? I mean, are you going to see, or are we seeing any type of advocacy for older workers with incentives for employers to take on a certain percentage of their workers as older workers? We're talking 37 to 65, or 70, if that's, and I know there's different. That was a point I would hope you could make. And then the other thing would be advice, for those in the job market, with and I know that's hard.
Well, unfortunately, I don't really see a strong trend towards that. Your tech companies are typically younger just because that's who traditionally knows that type of business. I think as the worker shortage goes, further and further down that road, because there will be a crisis at some point as our birth rate keeps dropping in the United States. And if we want to grow our economies, that means there's going to be more jobs and less people to apply. And so the really smart companies, in my opinion, will rethink their hiring practices, and they will try to accommodate a broad range of employees, and that includes the older workers. And they will find ways to accommodate that and bring it in and utilize that skill set. And to be able to adapt in your own culture to a broad range of ages. So you're not encouraging competition between the 30-somethings, the millennials, or all these labels that we've got now.
Right.
The baby boomers. We have all these labels that we label people with, which is a negative, really.
Right.
Because ultimately, if you're a XYZ employee, that's what you are. You're the same as the 30-something, the 60-something.
Right.
You're still one of the team players for this. And to be effective, I think that's where you've got to go as a company. I don't know if you'll ever see any government action. Sometimes it's ineffective. I think tax strategies might be a way to encourage business.
Well, what's interesting, I mean, in preparation for this show, let me move this over here too. That's kind of cool too. In preparation for this show, I looked at LDS, employment,
right.
But I also looked at the papers. I looked at some other things, and it's amazing how many 9 to 10 to 11 to 12 hour jobs are. I mean, they are flooded with
right.
those types of jobs. But anything of substantial nature for people that have experience in education, it's kind of an interesting world out there right now, isn't it?
And it's very difficult. And, I mean, anybody that's been in the job market knows that $12 an hour is not a living wage. And I'm not advocating that we've got to have the government to come in and dictate what minimum wage are. I think that's the business's responsibility to do that. But there is ways to look at how you compensate your people. It can be performance-based. It can be a lot of different ways that you can do it and still make it work. But I do think that you've got to find ways to retain the best people. You've got to find ways to hire the best people. If you don't, you're going to eventually be kind of wondering where you're going to go from.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, some of the bigger companies now, in fact, there was just a job, a big job fair that's coming out. I think it's, one of the government agencies is putting it on, but that's very unusual in today's world. You don't see that very often. You see it in the military world now with, I'm involved with the ESGR, and we do job fairs for veterans. And why? Because, the veterans and the current Guard and Reservist members sometimes have a very difficult time getting hired because it's the same thing. It's like you talked about before. In many cases, they look at it as a baggage thing.
Mm-hmm.
Are you still in the service? Oh my gosh, they could get deployed.
Yeah,
they could have to go to drill. They could have to do all these things. Well, the good side is that they've got $1 million worth of training behind it. Well, you can take that to the same with the older worker and everything else. How much training do you have? You have over $1 million worth of training in you.
Yeah.
I have over $1 million worth of training in me. Life experience itself is worth quite a bit. So, if you're an employer and you can hire that, they've been through this stuff, and you kind of revamp the way you look at people.
Right.
That, oh my gosh, are you kidding me? That's all we're getting.
Right.
As opposed to, oh my gosh, this is what we're getting.
Exactly.
It's the same group of people, but it's all in your perspective of how you look at those human resources.
Mm-hmm.
When life changed, I think, is when companies chose to go away from Mr. Bo Babka, he's an employee, to employee 917257. So once you have an employee number, it's easier to treat people less like humans if you put a number on them.
Mm-hmm.
I think if a successful company, you need to get back to that. I've seen good examples of it today, but with the fledgling states. I mean, you look at some 1-800-CONTACTS, for example. They're doing a lot right now. We're going to do a luncheon there later this year, but their newest building there, they've got a cafeteria so people can eat cheaper. You've got all these different things, gymnasiums, places to work out, so it's a whole thing. So they're on the cutting edge of trying to figure out a way to make employees happy. It's not always about the money.
Right.
If you accommodate people and help them, and
now it's more about the benefits.
If Bill Rappleye or Bo Babbitt could come in there and apply for a job, they're not immediately discarded because of, you happen to have a very early year of graduation from high school that they can see on the application or something like that. And so instead, so they're totally turned off from that. I don't know if you've ever had an interview. As soon as they figure out how old you are, the interview changes.
They can
directions.
tell. Yeah, as soon as they have you in. We're gonna lose our feed here in just a second, but we're gonna come back because I've got a few more questions. Facebook Live only goes for about 30 minutes, and I want to go just a few more minutes because I didn't cover everything I wanted. But you're watching BEAU'D Not Broken, the Daily Bend, and we're really talking about everybody being BEAU'D in the job market, especially those that are out there trying to find it. It takes a lot of courage to get up I know from prior experience, hundreds and hundreds of no interviews, but putting in applications. I know you're out there too as well, men and women. So if this thing goes I think it's going to go in just a few seconds. We'll get the feedback up, and we'll get things going real quickly again. And we're just about there, but we're still on. So maybe something's. We'll just wait. We'll just wait. We'll just wait until it goes. It's still going.
I knew you should have worn your Batman shirt today.
I know. I wore the One Man Army shirt today. I should have worn the Batman shirt. Some advice for. I mean, you've got the chamber. You're an elected official here in Draper as well. I mean, you've seen a lot. What would be your advice? Not just, I guess, for an older worker, because we've kind of focused on that. But do you have any? I know there's no sure things, but what kind of advice could you give to people that could maybe help them? I know we talked about being patient and not taking your last job or your last couple jobs that may have been laid off or even fired or whatever. Right. Or even retired. You might have retired and said, "Oh, the grass is greener over at I think I can get a better job or whatever," right. And they're struggling. Are there some common denominators there that you see that people could do to help themselves be more marketable?
I alluded to it earlier. I think one of the things you have to do is not be afraid and show that. We're still on.
I think we're still going. We're good.
But when you're in the interview, don't tip your hat that you're afraid of the
right.
future or whatever. And depending on whatever challenge that you may have, whether you're over 50, whatever it is, don't hide from it. Sell it. Use that. If you're the one, instead of kind of going pretending, you see a lot of stuff. Well, here's something you can do to look 40 years younger. That's probably a mistake.
So,
yeah.
So Botox and hair coloring is out.
That's your choice if you want to do that, but don't use it to get a job.
Right.
So if you have experience, let that ride first. And I know it's hard to get past a resume thing because a lot of times now they're scanned by a computer and the computers don't get stuff right sometimes. Right. And so a lot of times you have to go back to the old instincts and stuff like that. Work your network whenever you can, and try to take advantage of those. If you have a friend that has good connections, ask them first. I know that's not
right.
always the most effective thing. There's not one sure thing you can do to get a job. You've got to play every card that you've got in your hand to work through it. But the main thing is when you go in there, you say, I've been around for a long time, but I can tell you right now, because of that, I can bring super high value to you. If you want a person that's experienced a lot, yet is very teachable, I could say for myself, when I grew up, we didn't have computers in high school. Most people, oh my gosh, you must be ancient. Mm-hmm. Well, it's also something that teaches you something. Mm-hmm. If the power goes out and you have no access to electricity, who's going to be the best tool to do that? The people that had to do that way a long time ago.
Right.
You can still write stuff out on a piece of paper.
Right.
Yes, I can. And so you can say that's a benefit. Yet, guess what? You've adapted. You look at the technology you're using.
I know we're doing this.
I do a weekly newsletter at the chamber. I had to create that myself. I had to do all this stuff. So you can't say just because I'm a baby boomer that I don't understand technology or want to embrace
right.
technology. I mean, that is not a true fact.
No, that's good. That's good advice. How about since we're still rolling, which is good. What about areas of work? I mean, certain types of jobs. Are you seeing anything emerge or something that's going away that people might think about, retooling in a certain area, or is it just kind of a real crapshoot out there right now?
Well, crapshoot's a good word. I think the biggest trend right now is that people are starting their own gigs.
Huh. Yeah.
You know that. You're a prime example of that.
Right.
I'm kind of doing it here at the chamber because it is,
you're an entrepreneur, basically, helping businesses help themselves.
I don't have a huge team of people to help me. I have a board of directors that is elected by our members and stuff. But you see that more and more because they're driven by this because that's where the success lies. They have more control,
right?
Oddly enough. But, technology is a big deal. If you don't really feel comfortable with technology, get some education. You know, you can go find the 11-year-olds that'll teach you.
Right.
You know, they
right.
used to be able to do
Right.
like VCRs, but those are
Right.
old now. So now what they'll do is reprogram your computer for you or fix your iPhone.
Mm-hmm.
You have a grandson. I can take a broken iPhone. He can take it apart and fix it. He's 14, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Replace the glass, whatever you want done. But the fact is that all of us can have these skills. We can all learn them.
Right.
Don't be afraid of them. Use them. Sell them. You know, when you walk into an interview, make sure they know you're the best applicant. You know, and if you don't get it, you don't get it. But don't worry about it going in. You got nothing to lose. You got everything to gain. So stay on that confidence roll and explain to them, look, take a chance on me. It's okay to say that because they're already thinking that. They're already thinking that. You know, I don't know how many times I've been told that, well, you know, if you'll take that lower wage you talked about,
right.
You'll just quit when another job comes along. Well, guess what? Everybody can say that. You know, I just talked to Representative Hughes about this no-compete law that they were trying to work through in the session this year. One of the points that he made, we're a right-to-work state.
Right.
Okay. So businesses in the state of Utah, they can go to Bo or they can go to Bill and said, thank you very much. We're going in a different direction. You're done today. And so pick up your check on your way out.
Right.
They don't have to give you a reason. It's not, Bo, you didn't do your job. Bo, you didn't come on time. Bo, you didn't, you know, you don't fit into our organization. They don't have to do that. They don't have to even give you a reason. Okay. And so, you know, be educated on those facts and make sure you point that out. I said, well, we're in a right to work state anyhow. And so the fact is that I could leave doesn't really have any bearing on whether you hire me, correct? That's a correct statement.
Right.
And sometimes being bold in that might actually go, God, this guy's kind of knows what he's talking about and all that. So the reason why I want to work here is because I like your company.
Right.
I've done the research.
Bring it back.
I've done it. I like you guys.
Right.
I know that I can bring something to the table for you guys. You're missing X. Be bold about it. You know, and be strong. Don't be so afraid because, you know, when you're afraid in an interview, you're sitting back like that. You're not up on the table leaning up going, let's roll. You know, to use a military phrase, let's mount up. Let's go fight that battle. Because that's the way the business world is today. You know, today, every day is a battle. And they need commanders.
Right. They
need people that lead out. They need people that aren't afraid to make those bold decisions. You know, collaboration is great until you try to solve a problem. Now, if you ever work by
somebody's got to make
well,
that ultimately.
You got 20 people in a room. You're trying to make a decision. It's not going to take you an hour to do it. It'll take you a week.
Right.
You know, well, we've got to reach consensus. We've got to get that. Well, sometimes old school, when you got to have a decision by the end of the day to move forward, to write a contract, to do whatever it is, you got to have somebody going, you know something, I've studied the facts, X, Y, and Z is what it is. Let's go. And everybody goes, you know, Bo's right. Let's go.
Yeah, in the age of indecision and committees and meetings and all that, that's interesting.
You know, that's where we're at in the business world now, and that's got to change because, you know, one of the things I learned being in the corporate world for a number of years is that you've got to be nimble. You know, the stock market dictates what you do, and I'll never forget when everything changed in the cable business, and my bosses would say, "What did you do today to affect the stock price?" And that still sticks in the back of my mind, and it's really a hard concept for the worker to get his brain around. I don't know. I don't know what working in the warehouse has to do with stock price. Well, what do you think it has to do with stock price?
You should know. Yeah, you should know.
Yeah, it's bringing value.
Right.
It's bringing value to the company, and so if you can show you understand those bigger picture things, sometimes you can be a lot higher value to these companies. They're looking for somebody because leaders are in short supply. They really are. Unfortunately, it's safer not to be on the tip of the spear.
Right, right. But I think there's a lot of regular folk out there. I think that, you know, probably would rather be in that situation where they want to lead and they'd like an opportunity to lead, but they just haven't had that opportunity for a while. Anything else to add? I think I really, you know, I think from time to time we're going to lean on Bill in a sense, because I get a lot of inquiries from people about jobs and, you know, not that I'm a guru at all, but, you know, the networking of people that we all kind of know together and talking about this issue. That's why I wanted to come and talk to Bill, because we've talked about it before. We've talked about, you know, age, but we've also talked about what are the basic skills in getting a job, and how to do that kind of stuff. And I know some of the jobs out there right now are frustrating because of the hourly wages, or they're only part-time. There's a lot of people out there, us included, that have 2 or 3 jobs just
Right.
because one's for benefits, one's for a little bit more money. It's just an amazing thing. But I wanted to have something where people could really see that it's not just you. It's not just you. It's not just people that are BEAU'D in the sense of trying to find the good job. I think you have to also look at foundations and building it back. If it's your second career, third career, or just a maintenance type of job, I think you really maintenance being, it's something that's, you got a little retirement, or you got something else. I think you have to have the same mentality going into all of it. Because if you have a lackadaisical attitude about it, then you're really never going to get a job. But if you're too bold, then you're gonna
Right.
lose a lot of opportunities. So there's that, bridging that gap. So anyway, with all I taught, anything else to add?
Well, one final comment, and it's just it just kind of fits into the BEAU'D thing. I don't know if you've ever done archery or anything like that, but think of a bow, whether it's a compound bow or a regular bow. If you've ever done archery, the power comes when you're bowed. When you pull that bowstring back and you stress that bow, okay, that's when you're going to put the most power on that arrow to hit the target. And so being BEAU'D isn't a bad thing.
No.
It
No.
gives you power. It's a reserve power. It's a spring power. And so it gives you more energy if you use it and target it the right way to hit the bullseye.
And I didn't pay him for that, but that was awesome. Thank you very much. I did. I really did. And that's what the Daily Bend's about. And Bill, thanks for being.
You bet. Glad to be
Thanks
on.
for being on, and you know how much this community relies on you, and you've got a name around the state. So I appreciate you coming on and having the time to do it. Hopefully you'll watch. You're watching live. Hopefully you'll pass the shows on. Go to BEAU'DNotBroken.com on the web. This will be posted on Facebook as a live, but it stays on Facebook. Again, if you have any show ideas, anybody that wants to come on that has interesting stories, accounts, adversity, ways to help people, it's just regular folks helping regular folks here on BEAU'D Not Broken, the Daily Bend. Have a great day. We'll see you tomorrow, and remember, it is all about the bend.